They were just 15 hours away from handing me my $2.4 million pension. 15 hours. Instead, at exactly 6 p.m., my employee badge chirped once, sharp and final. Beep. Red light. Access denied. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I simply stood there, feeling 24 years of loyalty evaporate in less than a second. My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 46 years old, and until that moment, I was the Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer at Barryton Strategic Holdings, a global investment firm headquartered in Port Mercer. For nearly a quarter-century, I had been the woman behind the curtain, making sure the machine ran clean, even when the people running it didn't want it to. The irony wasn't lost on me. The person responsible for ethical compliance was being escorted out like a criminal, precisely 15 hours before her retirement package was set to vest. Marcus from security cleared his throat and avoided my eyes. I need your badge, your laptop, and your phone, Ms. Carter. I'd known Marcus for over a decade. His daughter had interned in my department. Now he couldn't even meet my gaze. May I ask why? I said calmly, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. HR will contact you with the details. The rehearsed answer told me everything. This wasn't an impulse. It was planned. Calculated. I handed over my belongings with quiet dignity and walked through the marble lobby that had been my second home for most of my adult life. From the mezzanine, I saw Alina, one of my junior analysts, staring down in disbelief. I gave her a small nod. Remember what I taught you, I thought. The glass doors sealed behind me with a pneumatic hiss, and just like that, it was over. Outside, Port Mercer was bathed in golden autumn light, the kind of evening that made glass towers glow and softened even the coldest steel. I felt none of it. Only when I reached my car did the math hit me. 6 p.m., the night before my pension would vest at 9 a.m. the following morning. $2.4 million. Gone. I knew exactly who had ordered it. Bryce Langford. Our CEO. The man brought in 18 months earlier to modernize a Barryton and fast-track an IPO. The same man who once joked that ethics were speed bumps on the highway to profit. As I drove home, my personal phone buzzed. An email. Subject line, termination and confidentiality agreement. I skimmed it at a red light, my jaw tightening. In exchange for 6 months' salary, I was expected to waive all unvested retirement benefits and agree never to disclose any information about Barryton, its business practices, or the circumstances of my departure. Including to regulators. They weren't just firing me. They were trying to silence me. The warning signs flooded back. The meetings I was suddenly excluded from. The new reporting structure that bypassed my department. The quiet way my authority had been eroded piece by piece. I had believed in the institution more than the people steering it. That was my mistake. My house was dark when I got home. No spouse. No children. For years, my career had been my life. That realization should have crushed me. Instead, it felt like a door opening. I had nothing left to protect. And when you have nothing to lose, you become very dangerous. I went straight to my home office and opened the wall safe. Inside were 2 encrypted external drives. My insurance. For the past 2 years, as Bryce reshaped Barryton into something reckless and unrecognizable, I had documented everything. Emails. Altered reports. Transactions that didn't pass the smell test. Every time my concerns were dismissed. I hadn't done it out of paranoia. I'd done it out of duty. By 9:18 p.m., I had organized the files and uploaded my whistleblower report to the SEC. I attached evidence of inflated asset valuations, concealed liabilities, shell companies parked in tax havens, and internal emails discussing how to massage the numbers ahead of the IPO. I also documented my termination, time to the minute to avoid paying my pension. Retaliation, plain and simple. Then I did something else. Something Bryce never imagined I'd dare. I sent carefully selected documents to 5 institutional clients. The kind with zero tolerance for ethical games and billions under management. I drafted messages to 3 financial journalists I trusted, but I didn't send them yet. Those were my final lever. By midnight, the gears were turning. I took a sleeping pill and went to bed, oddly calm. I slept better than I had in years. At 6:30 the next morning, I made coffee and opened my laptop. At 7:45, the first text arrived. Systems are locked. Reports won't finalize. Do you know what's happening? I smiled. In their rush to erase me, they had forgotten the approval protocols I'd built years earlier. Critical financial reports required my digital sign-off. With my access revoked and no reassignment in place, the system was frozen. At 8:45, my phone rang. Unknown number. Evelyn Carter, I answered. Evelyn, it's Bryce. His voice was tight. There's been a misunderstanding. I said nothing. We'd like you to come in and sort this out. HR acted prematurely. I'm not available, I replied. I have a meeting with my attorney at 9:30. We can fix this, he said quickly. Your retirement package. The one that vests in 15 minutes, I said. The $2.4 million you tried to steal by firing me 15 hours early. Evelyn, be reasonable. I've been reasonable for 24 years, Bryce. Now I'm being legal. I hung up. At 9 a.m., the SEC issued a public notice announcing an investigation into Baritin's strategic holdings for potential securities fraud. At 9:05, 2 major clients began pulling their funds. At 9:14, the first news article broke. By 9:27, trading was halted as Baritin's stock plunged. And as I watched from my kitchen table, still in pajamas, I understood something with perfect clarity. They thought firing me was the end. They were wrong. It was only the beginning. By mid-morning, Baritin Strategic Holdings was no longer a company in crisis. It was a company in freefall. I watched it unfold from my kitchen table, coffee going cold beside me, as alerts stacked across my screen. Trading resumed. The stock dropped another 12% in minutes. Analysts scrambled. Anchors stumbled over their words. And somewhere inside that glass tower, executives who had once dismissed me as overcautious were now staring at terminals they couldn't control. At 8:45, my phone rang again. Same number. Bryce. I let it go to voicemail this time. I already knew what he would say. At 9:05, a former colleague texted, barely coherent. The board is freaking out. Compliance approvals are locked. Nobody knows who has authority. I knew. Because I had designed it that way. Years earlier, when no one was paying attention, I had insisted on layered approvals tied to individual accountability. At the time, Bryce called it bureaucratic nonsense. Now it was a choke point, and the entire system was gasping for air. At 9:15, the first class action lawsuit was filed by shareholders. At 9:19, a financial blog published evidence that Bryce had sold a significant portion of his personal shares a week before the IPO filings. That detail hadn't come from me. That was the market turning its own spotlight inward. By 10 a.m., Baritin had lost over $1.1 billion in market capitalization. In under 3 hours. My phone buzzed non-stop. Journalists. Board members. Even HR. I ignored every call. I had already said everything that mattered, and I'd said it where it counted. At 2 p.m., I finally left the house and walked by the lake near my neighborhood. The air was crisp. Leaves crunched under my shoes. Red, gold, orange. Nature's warning colors. For the first time in years, I noticed how beautiful they were. My phone chimed with an email from the SEC confirming receipt of my whistleblower report. They requested a formal interview and noted potential whistleblower rewards ranging from 10 to 30% of collected penalties. Given the scale of the misconduct, it could mean far more than my pension ever was. But money wasn't why I did this. Another email followed. From Alina. They're saying terrible things about you. But I know the truth. You taught me where the line is. I won't forget that. I smiled. If that was my legacy, it was enough. The next day, I sat in a sterile SEC interview room for hours, walking investigators through every file, every transaction, every quiet warning that had been ignored. When they asked why I hadn't come forward sooner, I told them the truth. I believed I could fix it from the inside. I believed in the institution. I was wrong. When they asked what I wanted out of this, I didn't hesitate. Accountability. For everyone who trusted the system and was betrayed by it. By the time I left the building, Barrington's board had convened an emergency session. By that evening, Bryce Langford was gone. So was the CFO. And 48 hours after being escorted out of the building, I received a call I never expected. Eleanor Winters. Board chair. She didn't threaten. She didn't negotiate. She asked me to meet. In person. Off the record. At the Artemis Club, she told me what I already knew. I was right. About everything. The board had been misled. And now they needed someone to clean up the wreckage. She offered me the one thing I hadn't anticipated. Interim CEO. Full authority. Public acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Immediate vesting of my pension. I asked for a night to think. I spoke to one person. Michael Chan, our former general counsel. He asked me one question. Where can you do the most good? I had my answer before I left his house. I called Eleanor back before her deadline. I accepted. On my terms. That night, I walked back into Barrington Tower through the executive entrance. The same building that had locked me out now unlocked every door. The board voted. 7-5. Not unanimous, but enough. At 8 p.m., I became CEO. I didn't celebrate. I worked. I read every email Bryce thought no one would ever see. Including the one ordering my termination down to the minute. Exactly 15 hours before her pension vests. No ambiguity. No accident. The next morning, we went public. Bryce's termination. My appointment. Full cooperation with the SEC. The stock stabilized. Barely. But it held. At 9 a.m., I stood in front of nearly 1,000 employees in our auditorium. Some angry. Some scared. Some hopeful. I told them the truth. I had been fired to be silenced. I refused. I told them what to expect from me. Transparency. Accountability. Protection for those who did the right thing. I didn't ask for trust. I asked them to watch what I did next. And they did. Slowly, cautiously, something shifted. People spoke again. Lights stayed on after hours. Heads lifted. A culture that had been suffocating began to breathe. Weeks later, the SEC investigation expanded. Charges were filed. Penalties followed. Barrington paid heavily, financially and reputationally. But it survived. More importantly, it changed. As for me, I still keep that old notebook in my desk. The one I carried for 24 years. On the first page, I had written, "Integrity is doing the right thing when no one is watching." Turns out, doing it when everyone is watching matters just as much. They fired me 15 hours before my pension vested, thinking they were erasing me. Instead, they handed me the beginning of a chapter they could never control. And that, more than any payout, was the real victory. If this story made you think, if it made you angry, or if it reminded you why ethics still matter, tell me in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can do isn't breaking the rules. It's refusing to stay silent when others do.